It is a classic.
Dave doesn't like us having fun over here.
Yeah, so you know me, I'm anti-fun.
About music.
Serious
Right.
music for serious people.
Serious business, guys. Making fake internet radio.
Okay, so Miranda, I think what the format which we usually follow is very casual. We're going to first talk to you about kind of career points and how you got into performing contemporary music, especially. But general career questions and a conversation like that will be very easy. And we'll also want to listen to a clip from the track that you sent us, which is Mika S. And that is from Melting the Darkness?
Yes.
Okay. And that was released in November this past year, like last month, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, great.
Yes.
And so we'll go with that. And then after that, we're going to hit just a couple things in the news, topics, stories section, which can go fairly quickly. They tend to. But
we don't really have anything. There's no news.
There's no big... Well, it's Christmas time.
Sure.
Christmas time.
But so I think if you I don't know what your time constraints are like this morning, but generally the show doesn't go. I mean, I'd guess today we won't go over 45 minutes to an hour or so. But if you have to take off for anything, that's fine.
No rush.
Okay.
All right.
Well, additionally, as our guest, and as you noticed, sometimes there's lag with the audio or different kind of connection things. Just assume that your audio is sounding great, and if any of us start talking, just keep going.
Oh.
You have the speaking right of way. You have the stick.
Okay. Great.
All right.
Cool.
So I'm ready to go. We'll let Patrick introduce the show, and then Nate will introduce himself, and then I will introduce myself, and then Sam will introduce himself, and then Patrick will introduce you, Miranda, and start the conversation. Sound good?
All right. Yeah.
That's Patrick, and then Nate, and then me, and then Sam, and then back to Patrick. Yes, Sam, you're 4.
That's a long way out for
I know. That's why you do. That's why you do the fingers.
I don't do the fingers.
I don't know if I've been second in a while. This is exciting.
I like to mix it up. All right.
Do you have any questions before we get started?
Me? No.
Okay.
All sounds good to me.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Right, here we go. In 3, 2.
This is SoundNotion, the weekly podcast for new music and music news. I'm Patrick Gulo.
I'm Nate Blyton.
I'm David McDonald.
And I'm Sam Merciers.
Today we're happy to have with us on the show a violinist gramophone calls an artist to be reckoned with. She has performed all over the world at the most prestigious venues, and I must say one of the busiest artists in the new music scene I know. We'll be listening to a track from her new album, Melting the Darkness, in a little bit, but first, welcome to the show, Miranda Cookson.
Hi. Hi, guys. Great to be here.
Thanks for coming on today.
Pleasure.
I think I want to start off with a conversation about you are known very much as a performer of contemporary music, especially in the new music scene here in New York City. I want to know if you first got into performing contemporary music through opportunity or through a natural just passion for that kind of music. What drew you to the career that you now have?
Well, it would be a combination of those two, but I was definitely quite drawn to it, particularly in my 20s. Before that, I had done kind of the occasional contemporary piece, which I always enjoyed a lot. But I was also very immersed in the standard violin repertoire and so on. But particularly in my 20s, I started. I'm going to take one of these out. I can hear better. Okay. I just started to really discover a passion for it and an affinity for it. I started to really feel like it opened whole areas of expression and understanding the workings of music in ways I hadn't, fully gotten into before. And well, at the time, I went back. I left school after my undergrad years for a while, and then I went back to Juilliard to do my graduate degrees. And at that time, particularly, partly because of the person I was studying with, Robert Mann, the founder of the Juilliard Quartet, he was somebody who was always very equally involved in the core repertoire as well as doing tons of premieres and very involved in the music of his time.
That takes a lot out of it.
And he was so he was very inspirational for me, and all the things he would talk about working with composers. So along with that, I just started doing everything that I could find at the time to do, which meant both in the school, doing all the new music offerings that were there in terms of courses and ensembles and so on, and then also just looking into the repertoire. Some of the earlier things I got into were more the kind of American modernist music, like Carter, Shapey, people like that. This kind of led me to branch into a lot of other things. And then the other part of it was just at the time I started to meet more people on the scene here in New York. I was basically asked to play in some things, new music ensembles, and just had a really great time at it, and discovered a real affinity for it. And I think one thing that helps in new music, and doing a lot of it, is the ability to absorb all the different languages and styles quickly. Because I think for some people it's a little more in their nature that if something is kind of unfamiliar, that it kind of puts them off, or it's a little bit of a slows things down for them. But some people are a little more like they thrive more in the feeling of what is this, and I don't know what I'm dealing with. And I'm like that, you know. I love being in that position of being like, well, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to try it. So it just really worked out very well for me. So I just found myself suddenly doing a lot of different things here in New York with different groups, and then forming my own projects and doing solo pieces and whatnot. So it just took off from there quite quickly.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly no shortage of performance spaces and new music groups to perform with in New York City. What has the reception been like for the kind of music that you've talked about, especially as you've gotten more and more into the 20th century music, 21st century music, performing in places that aren't New York City, like perhaps smaller towns around America or wherever it might be, or around the world. Has the reception for this sort of performance, this sort of music, would you say, as someone who performs quite often, do the communities really gather around these sorts of performances when they happen?
Sometimes, yes. Some places, I find it rather heartening these days that there is more new music activity, places presenting it and sponsoring it in cities and towns that are not just the big coastal places like New York or LA, or in Europe like Berlin or Paris. And I feel like there's a little more of a dissipation of just activity.
Yeah.
Which I think is really great to see. So that's going on. I think there's a little bit. It depends what kinds of venues you're dealing with. There are definitely those places that are still very much geared around the traditional classical repertoire. So some of them are still a little. Yeah, it's the newer stuff is just not really what they're going for. So you have to a little bit push them in that way. Say, I would love to put this on the program.
You gotta sneak pieces into your program.
Yeah.
Like these like encores from living composers, something.
Say, well,
like
I'll
that.
do all this, but or where you put it on the program, and you say, well, I'll do all this, but I'm going to put this here also, just so you get to hear it, and you might actually like it.
I'll trade you 3 Vivaldis for 1 Xenakis. Does that ever come up in the negotiation?
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
Well, kind of. It's you kind of have to do what they're really eager to have, But then then you got to hear this also.
Yeah.
So it just depends, on the presenter and the venue you're dealing with. I do find that some people, if you're performing effectively and so on, some people will be much more enthusiastic than they thought they might be with the new stuff. And I guess particularly younger audiences they come to it with not so much preconceived ideas. But
what kinds of audiences are you seeing for your stuff now that you mention it?
Well, for me particularly, I'm a very known entity in the new music world now. So a lot of my audience comes from people who are really excited about that music already. There are people who just already know of me, and might know some of the composers that I'm working with already. So I have a very kind of built-in audience in that world. With the general classical music audience, I'm also a little bit trying to find that balance between playing the older music and the new, and because my career has gone so strongly in the kind of new music direction, there are some people, if they think of performers who go and play a lot of Brahms or Fauré or something, and I'm not somebody that will come to mind for them. So
do you play a lot of Brahms and Fauré? and I'm curious,
I love to.
What the overlap of those audiences are.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I would love to play more of that music. It's what I grew up playing, but there is a certain divide between those audiences. I think there are the classical music fans who really just want to go and hear that, and so then there are performers they know who do that kind of stuff, and then there's just the real new music, passionate new music audience. They're always out. They want to go out and have a new experience, or they want to just hear what people are writing now, and there's definitely some overlap of those, and people who will go to both of those are people who really love the mixed programs of putting old and new. But there is a certain division still there in the music world as a whole. And I'm kind of, both for myself and what I get to do in terms of bringing listeners, kind of trying to still bring those things together. I absolutely feel it as one continuum of music, and I don't divide it in my own mind at all. And I grew up playing all that stuff for much of my life, and I still love to. And even when I teach, I love to teach the standard rep because I feel very grounded in that music still. But I feel like in terms of performance, it's gotten a little bit like you're doing one or the other. So.
Well, so how did you, if you grew up playing that standard rep, how did you as a performer then move and expand into that thing? I remember when I grew up playing music, when I would first hear stuff, even stuff that is relatively tame, like when I first heard Hindemith, I thought that was like just beyond the pale, and I didn't understand what was going on there. And, now I understand how, by comparisons of music written thereafter, Hindemith is very, very tame. And I always wonder, like, if I had that experience, how do I share that experience with people who are listening to music? And I wonder if that's something that you ever consider as your role in helping people kind of through the same journey that you have had, starting in this older repertoire and then moving through to gradually more challenging stuff. Did you ever think about how you present that to the audience?
Yeah, well, when I'm programming older music with new, I try to find ways of either drawing the connections between the two or just having really vivid juxtapositions of things so that people are, there's something they can grasp onto orally or whether it has to do with the background of the piece or whatever, if they feel like reading up on it. But some kind of clear juxtaposition of things so that for that initial experience they come away with something, some kind of strong impression of what they heard. But I always feel you just have to have it in mind and encourage people to have in mind that one performance does not define your experience of anything. And when I play new pieces, also I approach it with the attitude is that you're kind of part of a process for everybody. Experiencing that thing for the first time in real time, and then just seeing where people are going to take it from there. Do they want to look into more of that composer's music? Do they want to come back and hear you play something like that again? Because I think for anyone, there's a certain kind of acclimation of your ears in terms of hearing these different styles. And I feel like audiences should also be encouraged to make a certain effort, and I don't mean to make it sound like hard work for everybody, like, oh, I have to do my homework or whatever, but just to make a bit that effort of just considering, well, what is going on here, and what are these artists trying to do, and so this sounds really different from anything I've heard before. So what are they really trying to convey here, or what are they working with? Because you can't often expect just to hear something and have it sort of wash over you and have a really I mean, all those things are valid, you know. You can just have your immediate impression of something and be like, okay, that was weird, or that was cool, or whatever. But there's a lot more there, and it is. I mean, this is why I do it too. It's constantly rewarding to really get into it and realize what's going on or what you're aiming for. And I think if audiences approach it with that attitude, then they will reap a lot of rewards from coming back to more concerts or.
Well, I think so, and it's very difficult to get. I mean, people these days, you can't count on everyone looking at liner notes for something either. So, I think performances is kind of like what you're talking about, especially perhaps in smaller venues, are fantastic for actually having an artist or the presenter talk about the connection between these pieces. And does provide, like, will address the audience. I mean, I can't tell you. I think everyone is on board with liking that. Like, anyone I've ever talked to about music or anything, no one has said like, I wish that person didn't come out on stage and tell me about what I'm going to hear, or like give me some background.
Ruin the mystery, right?
Yeah. Is this? I mean, would you say that this is a practice that generally you like to follow, or will you do kind of a mixture of like having some printed materials, or just a few sentences or something?
Yeah, well, lately I've been talking more at my performances.
It's fantastic. I love it.
I was writing quite a lot of program notes and liner notes for a while. I like writing also in general, and sometimes it helps me kind of clear my own head about what I'm doing. So sometimes I kind of get into writing things down. And it's useful sometimes to have that out there if somebody wants to take that step to look for it.
Right.
So I'm in favor of that. I think it depends on the occasion and the venue if you want to really just right off the bat hand them a lot of printed material or not.
Yeah,
but I've definitely been yeah, I've definitely been speaking some more at performances, and definitely just gotten just more like at ease with that. Um,
Yeah.
and nowadays I find it easier just to do that rather than kind of laying everything out in a very kind of organized way with program notes or whatever, but just kind of in a personal way, just it can reflect how I'm feeling that day about the stuff I'm about to play, and it feels a little more immediate and personal, and kind of in the moment about what we're about to hear do. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't necessarily like to make events like a whole kind of presentation, like like I'm there to teach people about this stuff or whatever. So I think it should be about.
You don't have
listening to
special
music, of
lighting
course.
for when you come out and talk to people. It comes in from that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's kind of going overboard, I suppose. But I mean, I think this kind of goes into the larger idea of education. And actually, one thing we haven't talked about is your kind of upbringing as a child with music. So I mean, like, what was your relationship like learning your instrument? How old were you? Were you you did say you had a strong background in the classics that we all know, but how did you first get involved with playing music and listening to music?
Well, both my parents are musicians. My father's a composer, and he teaches also theory and counterpoint. But both my parents are pianists, and that's how they met.
Through the magic of song.
Yeah, well, it was definitely just in the air all the time, all my life. But I started playing the violin when I was about 5. But there's a little bit of serendipity involved in that because I actually started because my older cousins were playing, and they grew out of their tiny little fiddle, and their mom gave it to my mom, or just thought, well, does Miranda want this? So she was like, well, maybe, I don't know.
So you started banging
So
it
that's how I
against
ended up. Yeah, and it survived that. So. Yeah, I honestly don't know, like, otherwise, if I would have gravitated towards a certain instrument, because I never actually said, oh, I want to play this or that, or.
Right. You might have been a dynamite tuba player. I mean, I think so.
Yeah, I can see that. I have a lot of lung power. Yeah, so I started with that, and then I started in pre-college at Juilliard when I was 9. So I was in that environment from very young, and among some really tremendously gifted young people and so on, and working with some great teachers. My parents, of course, have always been a very big influence on me in many ways, but they're also actually very consciously kind of. I think my going to Juilliard at that time was a good thing. They kind of left it to the school to provide me with a lot of my basic musical education at that time, and things that I got from my dad or my mom were kind of supplemental to that at the time. I mean, they would accompany me on the piano, of course, for some things when I was learning a piece, but were otherwise not hands-on, just teaching me all these fundamentals or anything. So yeah, and I felt very blessed with some really amazing teachers. I had some of the great violin teachers that were around. Shirley Gibbons at that time, and then I worked with Dorothy DeLay, who was a tremendous violin pedagogue and taught all kinds of amazing violinists. And and I was studying at the time with people like Midori and Gil Shaham and Sarah Chang, and just incredible violin whiz players,
Right.
Which was really, really inspirational to me and really pushed me to kind of keep up with that level of virtuosity and so on. But definitely those are people who are really playing the core virtuoso violin repertoire, a lot of it romantic era stuff. That's what they do, and there are certain ideals you're going for, whether it's whichever one you particularly prefer, but whether it's David Oistrakh or Heifetz or Itzhak Perlman or people like that. And so I was very immersed in that whole violin world, which is a tremendously rich tradition just to learn about and kind of cultivate in yourself. So that's what I came out of it. And at that time is when I would occasionally do one contemporary piece. Like there was a Mel Powell piece that I remember I played, or a Shula Mitron or something. But it was just a kind of isolated event, and
like let's try this out. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and and then there's some requirement for some audition or something, and you do that. And I always enjoyed it. Like I said, like I remember being really kind of intrigued by it at the time, but it just wasn't the point for me to just go into that all that much. Yeah, and then later, actually, I think a couple of my biggest influences were Robert Mann and also Felix Galimir, who are both quartet players, really, but just tremendous artists, and and also great interpreters of composers like Beethoven and Bartók and so on, but also kind of on the edge of their own time. So, I feel I had a very good progression in terms of my teachers and the kind of progressive steps I took toward doing contemporary music.
It's interesting to hear you talk about your education as a violinist, but you've recorded quite a few CDs now.
Yes.
I wonder if you could talk about the experience of learning how to be a recording artist, especially in the context of new music, and how, if at all, you've developed and changed in your understanding and how you engage with the recording process. And also a little bit about the new album, because I understand it was recorded differently than all your previous releases. You took 3 years to compile everything instead of just going in and doing it marathon style. So I'd like to hear what a violin virtuoso who has spent all this time working, what you think about your development as a recording artist and understanding that process.
Well, I've certainly done a lot of recording, as you can see from my bio. I guess I have like 9 CDs out by now. I really enjoy doing it in the process of recording. I suppose, I mean, by now I feel very familiar with the recording studio setup and how to do things. I think as a violinist, I mean, I think it's amazing all the technology that's available now, and that how many things you can kind of, mess around with in terms of editing and whatnot. But I do try to go from a basis of just getting performance down, and
Certainly.
And I think a lot of my training as a violinist was, I suppose that a lot of that did come from my years with Delay, is that because she was really passionate about developing, your accuracy and the strength of your consistency with your sound and your intonation and so on, and having a lot of discipline with that. And I feel like I've carried that over into, well, what I do now, even with virtuosic contemporary works, but also in terms of recording, being able to, start that take and go for a stretch of time and maintain some level of accuracy and not have to kind of start from a basis of just like chopping it up a lot. And
so do you get, as a result, do you get extremely picky though with like this couple seconds right here? No, not going to happen.
Well, yeah. Well, that's always the thing with recording. I try not to be too fussy over little moments. I mean, there are things where you feel like, oh, I would love to get that spot really sparkling, and and accurate and so on. But think it's not good to obsess over little things. And I ultimately what I do is I just listen to whole movements and stuff and just make sure the whole arc of the thing or the emotional expression of it is what I was really going for.
Nice.
Yeah, and I like recording because I mean, obviously it's a totally different dynamic from playing for an audience, but there's something about the purity of just dealing with your sound, and there's not even a visual element of, you know, with video or whatever, but just the sound. What are you doing with your sound? And that's the one thing that's being dealt with there. And
well, that's kind of what I'm curious about. Obviously, your job is to be very concerned with your sound. Has that developed into, over the years, like having an opinion about how your violin is microphoned or something like that? Because when the Beatles
yeah.
went
I think we're losing Sam a little bit.
Can you say that again, Sam? We lost you for a minute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
When the Beatles went in and did I Want to Hold Your Hand, they just did what the technicians told them to. And then when they did Sgt. Pepper's, of course, that was a completely different deal. They changed the recording studio into their instrument. I certainly don't think that's something that should be off limits for a classical artist. I was just wondering if you've developed any kind of opinions about the process in your experience that make you have opinions about how your microphone should be placed or anything like that.
Well, a bit. I mean, I'm not a very techie person in that way, but I definitely have certain things that I've come to prefer, and of course it depends on the music at hand. For the most part, I don't like to have a lot of reverb. I've gotten into discussions with people, and some record people kind of insist that that's kind of the norm out there, that, well, that's what people are used to. And I'm like, but it sounds like, you know, it's, you know, like it's just going on and on.
Arguing with the sound guy over how much reverb to use is a time-honored tradition.
Yeah. So I've definitely gotten into that. And then some pieces, I mean, particularly with this last CD I did, I mean, it's particularly because of the music I was doing, but I definitely was particular about how to capture the sound for that, because so much of the music itself is contained in these very minute nuances of sound you're getting from the friction of your bow, for instance.
You need to hear the
and some very quiet things.
Yeah, I agree. And like,
sorry, I can't hear you very well.
I'm sorry. A little bit of reverb can cover up that kind of nuance, actually. So.
I imagine, yeah.
Sam was saying that he likes the technical, kind of percussive sounds of the bow on the string and things like that you lose with a lot of reverb.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I definitely wanted to capture all of those things and having it mic'd quite close and quite dry. So that was a definite conscious choice.
Should we listen to a little bit of this recording?
Music, for sure.
I've got a clip of the Xenakis queued up. This is Mika S by Yanis Xenakis, performed by our guest Miranda Cookson.
On Melting the Darkness.
Indeed. That was an excerpt from Giannis Xenakis' Mika S, performed by our guest Miranda Cookson. Miranda, thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure. Glad you got to hear it.
Xenakis, you knocked me out with your delicate melodies.
I love how patient it is. It's so patient with the microtonal dissonance in there. It just hangs on for so long.
It's patient, but I feel like it still has a sense of urgency to it. Like I'm like kind of on the edge of my seat when I listen to it. It's immediate and like it's rising. It almost sounds like a voice too, Miranda. Like the way you make it sound, like it's like someone is speaking and just making these sounds with their mouth.
Oh, yeah, it is a bit like that. Like you're sort of moaning, kind of sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, there's some. I'm not sure there's any time that. Even when Xenakis' music gets a little more static or quiet, I think there's always such a kind of inner intensity simmering.
I think the miking really lends itself to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt for these pieces it was so important to get all that the kind of the real sense of the bow against the strings and this sense of it being like right there by your ear.
Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, I can't imagine this music having a lot of tons of resonance around it. Yeah.
I love hearing a violin be played when you're standing so close, because people don't think about how like a loud, violent thing it sounds like when your ear is right next to it, like when somebody's playing something very technically challenging and you're sawing that thing in half and your fingers are going crazy. When you're right there, because I was doing video for a video thing, like for an advertising thing for a violinist, and I'm videotaping her from like 14 inches away, and you can hear whack, 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 whack with her fingers, and it's so scratchy and loud. Yeah. It's really cool. I love the way it sounds. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, the string instruments are amazing kind of mechanism, It's kind of really amazing how it works, just having this box and the strings and the stick and the hair. And it's like there are actually so many kind of mechanical elements to it. So
right.
It's quite something, like everything that's going on, and if you just make one beautiful note, then you just kind of hear that and you're not maybe quite as aware of all this mechanical stuff that's going on. It's pretty complex as well, and violin technique is complex for that reason. So
yes, to me it's amazing because
it's really cool. Yeah.
You always have to imagine what your sound is sounding like, because if you're putting it out on a hall, a big like echoey, reverby hall, what people hear isn't what your ear is always going to be right there next to your instrument, so you're always going to hear it that way. It's just interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
There's a constant.
Yeah,
there's a constant sort of assessing of that when you're playing,
Yeah.
And depending on the hall and everything. And then, and there are those things like they say, like Heifetz used to say that he would play with a lot of scratch because he knew that, but he was always playing big halls anyway, but I guess he'd kind of really honed his sense of like how much to really dig in order to get the articulation clear 25 feet away or 100 feet away. And there's a whole art to that also.
Yeah.
You described in your experience playing chamber music and playing music like this, where performing this for an audience, it might be appropriate for an audience member to be like 6 feet away and really experience the scratching and really like get something closer to like I guess what your experience is, right up next to the instrument. And I was also interested to hear your thoughts of just like, I mean, so violin has so many techniques, so many different things that you can do with it, and like the audience that might be expecting something like Fauré, like and just like the glissando and the portamento kind of stuff, like that must have been an interesting thing, like I mean, just practicing that and working out how to do that to the best of what your ears might have found it to be. What
Oh
was that
yeah.
process
I mean,
like?
yeah. Well, I love the figuring out of all these things on my instrument. I mean, I love playing my instrument and figuring out how to make these things work. It's a lot of what kind of makes me go with all this music. And yeah, there's a lot just from a purely technical standpoint of finding solutions to things. And actually, that Xenakis piece, that one is actually pretty doable. But he has pieces that are actually literally like not possible. So you have to really you have to just come up with a solution that sounds effective. And with some other composers too, like Fernie Howe and so on.
Yeah.
So that's part of the performer's role, is to just find ways to really make these things work. The glissando thing, like in this piece, it's all pretty much doable, but you have to really. Yeah, I also try generally for the most accuracy as I can in terms of really playing what's there, because there's the approach you can kind of sort of throw yourself at it and kind of go for the effect of it, and it can sound pretty much what it's supposed to be. But I find if you really go for actually writing the pitches, for instance, the notation for that piece, it's notated with kind of guide notes of where in the glissando you're supposed to be. And sometimes you have these microtonal things that are supposed to rub up against each other. So if you really aim for those things, you really get a very specific effect. So those things are really fascinating to sort out. And then to develop the reliability of it, that you can just do it, in performance. Yeah. So, but it's really fun to take your instrument where it hasn't gone before.
Where no instrument has gone before.
I think violin really does hold up. A lot of like saxophone and clarinet are used a lot in extended technique contemporary music because the things they are able to do haven't been fully explored. Or have now begun being fully explored, let's say. But violin, considering how old it is, holds up very, very well to modern and contemporary technique treatment still to this day. To me, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's because I guess like with the clarinet, you gotta put that thing in your mouth and you gotta blow no matter what. But with a violin, it just because of the way the way you activate the sound, it builds in a lot of possibilities to me.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I had a quick question about the pieces. There were some new electroacoustic pieces on the album, and I see that that the composers themselves actually did the mixing for the piece as it was to appear on the CD, which I am very appreciative of hearing that, because if I were in that position, I would want to have the dictatorial control of the final mix down too.
Yeah, well, I felt that they really had the sense of what they were going for with those pieces, so I wanted to leave it to them. Two of them were actually written for me for this occasion to be recorded. So and from working with them, I could see that they had a real sense of the sound world they were going for, and how much certain things were supposed to come out of the texture or not. And they're both very expert at, all three of them, but thinking of the two who wrote for me, Alex and Robert, they're very expert in their use of technology and so on. So I knew they would just do it the way they really wanted it. Like, for instance, in Robert's piece, there are places where, that piece actually does have a fair amount of reverb in it. And there are places where the violin sound is actually a bit immersed within the whole electronics texture. It's not just like violin at the forefront. Which is interesting because he actually created the piece he wrote the violin part first, and then added the electronics to it, rather than doing it all kind of together at the same time. But then he made the choice to have the violin kind of dip in and out of the overall texture and not always be right in the forefront of things. And I felt that was what he was going for. And Alex's thing he had a lot of quite complicated layering of different effects and samples and the certain amount of reverb he wanted on that too. You know, sometimes you have like a bow strike going, which would be a pretty dry sound in real life, but it goes, and then there's like, you know.
So
yeah, that he was it's going for. So I was happy to leave that to them. It's like it's still a like integral part of the creation, is that whole creating that whole sound world.
So did those pieces strike you as creations that were composed with the intent of the finished product being generated in a recording studio, if that makes any sense? In other words, was it composed with the intent of a live recording, or was it composed with the intent of making a recording?
Well, I think they have kind of both in mind, really. I mean, I think for that they were envisioning the pieces for the recording and creating this thing, this like recorded object or whatever. But they know also that I want to perform these things live, and so there's also, I think there's an adjustment of things in terms of having the version that you perform live. You just know it's not going to be exactly the same effect in terms of, the reverb and the sound world live in the space and so on. Robert is right now in process of making, I haven't actually performed that one live yet, but he's making me, because he did it with by triggering himself at certain points, but he's making me a version that I can do myself, and I kind of figure that the sound world will be a little bit different also.
I actually would love to hear that, the contrast in the two, to the way the two sound.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're going to groan when I bring this up, but like the example I use is Radiohead. They do these exquisitely fine-tuned studio creations, and then they have to figure out a way to represent it on stage in some way.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to hear like a live recording and the album. That's always a great experience for me anyway. I like hearing how composers and performers work to overcome, because it's just, the environment is not going to make for the kind of control you need to create exactly the same when you're doing it live. So, can't wait.
Yeah. It becomes something different, yeah.
Yeah, see that you put one of those recordings on your YouTube channel or something for us.
I love how Sam likes to give people really, really precise career advice. Here's the thing that I would like to hear you do.
Yeah.
Please do this thing. It's like this is our opportunity.
It's good to know.
To make this is like Sam's Christmas list.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, hey, I'm not getting rich doing this show, so I might as well get a recording that I want to hear.
Right.
Get what you want.
That's right.
Nice.
Well, maybe we should move on. We don't have a lot of news stories to talk about this week, but there was one big thing that happened that I feel like we should address, and that is the sad news that Alan Kozin is leaving the New York Times. Has been a fixture of their arts and culture coverage there for a very, very long time. And just last year we talked about him, or maybe it was even earlier this year, we talked about him being moved from being a music critic to being kind of a general culture reporter. And I saw a couple of snarky people link to a story that he wrote about Justin Bieber getting arrested or something like that, and how misapplied his prodigious talents were to such a story. But anyway, he's a great writer, not just about new music, but about classical music, and I've also read some really great things he's written about jazz and other genres as well.
Well, he's a
Beatles.
he's a renowned scholar on the Beatles.
Yeah, he's written books. He read a book about him.
So hopefully he can find a more reputable news source that won't ask him to cover Justin Bieber crap. But the New York Times offered him a buyout and took it, so hopefully we will be seeing a lot more interesting stuff from Alan Kozin in the future through a different outlet. So I don't know where that will be, but I assume we'll find out about it on Twitter when it happens.
Yes. Also, we forgot to mention last week that artshacker.com, a project of friend of the show Drew McManus at adaptastration.com, is now live with their first batch of articles. If you guys don't know what this is, it was a project Drew proposed that's sort of like life hacks for artists. So
for arts management mostly.
Yeah, mostly for arts management people. And the articles, true to form, only one of the articles I found useful because I'm not an arts administrator. But they were very well done, and the one that I did like was about a product called Trello, which we actually use here on the show to organize content and stuff. So very good, and it was just very good so far of all the pieces I've seen. So congratulations. And
so
Dave,
if you're looking for some quick little hacks to do a better job at whatever music administration stuff you have to do in your career, you should check it out, artshacker.com.
And Dave will be having a piece on there eventually, won't you, Dave?
No, I won't.
I thought you would apply to do it.
No, not doing it. I don't have time. I would love to do it, but I don't have time.
All right. And just a quick note, this is to get Alan Pearson on the show. We wanted to cover the Alarm Will Sound, their new cool
Alan.
thing. Yeah, their new cool thing called Alarm System, which is a collaborative thing with visiting artists that goes on for a whole year. I'm not going to say anything else about it right now because I want to try and get Alan on the show. He hasn't been on the show in like 2.5 years or something, so.
Jeez.
I know.
Too long, Alan. Get back here.
Yeah, so I know he's watching the live stream right now, so just contact me.
Yeah, we'll set our calendars.
Just contact me. So, no, seriously, I want to talk about this, but I want to do it with him on the show because this, like one of their principal collaborators this first year is going to be Medeski, Martin, and Wood, which if you don't know Medeski, Martin, and Wood,
You've made some poor life decisions, I think.
They may be a funky, jazzy kind of band, but they're also definitely a new music ensemble. The stuff they're making, they're trying to make stuff that doesn't sound like stuff you heard before. That's for certain.
And they're great, and you can find all of their stuff all over the internet.
Yes.
We'll have links to some of their good stuff, right, Sam?
Yes, we will.
I say that because I know that Sam loves Medeski, Martin, and Wood, and Sam puts together our show notes, which you can find at soundnotion.tv/sn. And we'll also have links to all of the cool stuff Miranda's got going on. Miranda, where can people find your stuff and keep up with what you're doing?
Well, there's my website, mirandacookson.com, and there's a bunch of stuff on YouTube. I don't know. That's
Do you have any big
a lot of
performances coming
stuff
up?
out there, but
He has non-stop performances. I was going to mention that. Like her calendar. I'll link
I have.
specifically.
Yeah, I have a calendar page which I try to keep pretty up to date. Performance-wise, I have a few solo recitals in the coming months. There's one at Strathmore, which is a really nice venue. And I always, every year in New York, I play. The next thing I'm doing, I'm actually making. Speaking of, the next big thing I'm doing actually is right after the new year. Speaking of recording, I'm making my first recording for ECM Records. So I'm going to Europe to do that and recording.
Schnitka,
actually, yes, there you go. So I'm excited about that. It's also, speaking of the old and new that we were discussing, I find this album a little bit bridges those things. Bartók is by now an older classical composer, and Lutoslawski is somewhere in between because there's still some people who don't know his music. It seems rather modern to them, and Schnitka also. It's just wonderful music. I'm really excited to be working on. So that's my next sort of big project I'll be doing, and then other things.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we will have links to all of those things on our site, soundnotion.tv/sn. So thanks to everybody who visits that site and keeps up to date. Sam, lovingly puts together a collection of links to all of the things that we talk about each week. So be sure to check that out if you want to read up more on any of these things, or if you would like to continue this conversation with us after the fact. You can leave a comment there. You can connect with us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. If you would like to suggest a story to us, you can use hashtag SNWeekly when you tweet it at us, and we will be sure to check that as we're putting together our lineup for the next show. You can subscribe to this show and all our shows at SoundNotion.tv in the iTunes Store. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so using our Amazon affiliate search on our site, and use the PayPal donation buttons if you're feeling generous as well. Thank you to everyone who's done that already. SoundNotion's introduction includes music by Patrick Gulo. Thank you, Patrick, for being with us this week. It was nice to see you. This is 2 weeks in a row.
I know.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good for me. Pretty good for me.
We'll be taking next week off, the weekend between Christmas and New Year's, but we'll be back on January 4th. So we will see you then. Until then, have a good New Year.
Happy Hanukkah. Hanukkah's going on right now.
Happy holidays.
Happy New
Year.
I can't disrespect the wife.
Yeah. Miranda, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was really great having you.
Oh yeah, this is really fun.
So what we're gonna do for the recording is since we're gonna drop that excerpt in post production, so that's a clean audio, and you won't hear any of the distortion that you heard while we're actually having the show going on here. So it'll sound good and nice and clean and lovely and keening.
Okay. Awesome.
But
Keening
yeah,
is good.
yes, it's very keening. Well, I think that's about it. This show will be up either later tonight or tomorrow, and so you'll be able to find it on the site or through the podcast, catcher or whatever you use. Or I'll just forward you a link to it anyway.
Okay. Great. I
And
will
then tell all your
post it
friends.
around. Yeah. Oh, I should have mentioned my Twitter. I have a Twitter too.
I'll put a
I
link
just
to it.
didn't mention. Okay, link to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, hey guys, I got family leaving for, and I got to go say bye and hug them and stuff.
Okay.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Right.
Okay. So do we need to do anything for wrapping up here?
Well, I was gonna talk to Sam about he showed up late and he left early, so I wanted to talk to him about the live stuff and the audio change. I've got.
Let's get the fam jam going on. On melting the darkness. I sound like such an NPR goofball.
By our guest. That's what we do. We sound like NPR goofballs.
That's right. That is.
I think you sound much cooler than all of us combined.
Right.
on melting the darkness.
Indeed.
Yeah. I try to keep my role either like little jab joke inserts or or the occasional thoughtful thing, but mostly just goofballery. That's what it's all about.
It's all about,
Well, I didn't know if we were going to record a new thing, but I did want to at least chat.
Yeah,
about
I
it.
figured that was just a quick thing to say to Sam to get him back.
Yeah. An excerpt from.
And maybe. I'm gonna try to turn on this other.
That was
computer.
Yeah.
See if it comes
That's
back.
all right. You gonna try to turn on the other computer?
Yeah.
To what end, Nate? To what end?
I'm hoping to do some transcription stuff today. And I've got another computer with Finale on it, but this is kind of the main axe. But anyway. I was thinking to ask her about, or get into the violin viola thing a little bit. Because
Oh yeah, that would have been a good thing to ask about.
some places she still, it seems, lists herself as a violinist. There's a couple other organizations that she's a part of. Like, I wasn't sure about this Yeah, like one of her bios still lists this nunc.
Oh, I know. I forgot to ask about that too. Ugh. Okay. I saw that.
So she founded it, but I haven't seen anything. Oh, I guess there was a concert in June. I was worried that it was like a defunct project or something because I couldn't find anything more recent about it. So I didn't ask about it, but um, yeah, and then just looking through counterinduction and realized we had one of the composers on.
Yeah, we had the founder of counterinduction on.
Yeah, so I met the other composer in the group, Kyle Bartlett. I guess the other half of the other founder. She was at the only electroacoustic juke joint concert that I went to with Ben.
Oh, cool.
Mississippi.
Very cool.
I think that was like either before or just as they were starting the group, which is pretty fun. But
Melting the darkness.
Indeed.
Melting the darkness.
Melting.
Is that our show title?
No.
The title of her album.
Man, I'm a little disappointed. I should have been more ahead on figuring out stuff with her.
What do you guys think of the titles that are in there?
3 Vivaldis for 1 Xenakis, where no instrument has gone before.
Yeah, either of those is good.
Yeah, I'm okay with either.
Yeah.
I kind of like 3 Vivaldis for 1 Xenakis more.
That was an That was an excerpt from Yanis Xenakis' Mika S.
Hey, Sam's back.
Hey, Sam.
Howdy.
It's awesome how that link is persistent, isn't it?
I know. You
Yeah.
know what else is awesome? My in-laws have a Keurig, and it's like the biggest, baddest ass Cadillac of a Keurig single coffee cup thing. Like it's got a huge reservoir for water, and there's a light that glows inside of it, and when the water's getting low, the light blinks to warn you that you're running out of water.
I think my parents have that same one. It's probably from Costco.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, it whips up
You
a
know
pretty
about the
tasty...
new Keurig, right? The Keurig 2.0?
Uh-uh.
It has DRM on the pods.
What?
No shit. There's DRM.
Keep you from
coffee in
using
the world.
off-brand coffee pods?
Yeah. It's like printer cartridges that used to be DRM'd. How there's a little microchip on the lid, and if it's not an authentic Keurig microchipped lid, it won't brew the coffee.
So is this the beginning of the Internet of Things?
No, the Internet of Things already exists, and it's not. It's only slightly less douchey.
Well, I was thinking that this will
Then
turn
the
into they'll start doing this over the internet, and it'll be the first way that the Internet of Things impacts my life.
Right. That you
Well,
couldn't
so
make
here's
coffee
the hack.
because
If you
there's
ever
no
encounter
wireless.
this,
Okay.
the hack is you get an authentic Keurig pod, one authentic Keurig pod, and you snip off the part of the lid that has the microchip in it, and you tape it to the sensor in the Keurig.
I was thinking hot glue it in place, like so it's just like bound
Yeah,
to the sensor.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what people have figured out.
That is monumentally douchey of them, for the record.
I can't believe that happened because I know they were getting. I mean, there's been all this criticism of them, like that whole industry being so wasteful and to like prevent you from taking
From
any
using
of the
your own.
reusable ones or yeah.
Yeah, because they make the reusable cup.
I use reusable ones at work all the time. I just grind up some
You
coffee.
get better coffee that way.
Yeah, I grind up some, or we get sometimes when we're at Big Lots, they have these cool ones that are made out of biodegradable materials. Like there's no plastic; they're all like industrial strength cardboard and that kind of stuff, you know. So
The nice thing about the Keurig is that it can do coffee, but it can also do like tea
or hot cocoa or anything.
Or cocoa, yeah.
And
Anyway,
there's no
so
contamination.
So I cut in a clean version of the music, so we're good there. And I think you're right, Nate. I think it was Miranda.
Yeah.
I need to figure out how I can boost this.
Man, she looked so familiar to me for some reason.
Because her face is everywhere.
I guess
Yeah.
so.
And
She photographs well, so they probably use photographs of her pretty
Right.
frequently.
I'm sure that's a big part of it. So anyway, a couple of things I wanted to discuss with you, Sam, and we could record something if we wanted to for one of these. But I was talking to Nate and Patrick beforehand about the live streams, and I think they're more trouble than they're worth.
Okay.
Because I don't think anybody ever watches them, and I want to consider shutting down the live stream and just doing these as recordings.
I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Okay, so that would involve getting rid of the live page on our site, and that's it. If we still did do a live stream, we could certainly tweet it, but maybe save that for a special event or something.
Yeah, we might do live streams, but I don't think we need to for this.
Right.
that sounds like
The other thing is to move more toward the audio stuff that we started doing this fall. I think it's worth shutting down our video feeds. Up till now, Nate has been maintaining the video feeds with the audio files in them.
Okay.
And so I think what we should do is point the video listeners, put in like one last episode of a file in their feeds that says, hey, thanks for subscribing to the video feed. You may have noticed we've been doing this as an audio-only show, and we're going to be shutting down this feed. If you would like to continue listening to the show, switch over to this other feed.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the episode.
Just as the whole episode.
Oh, okay. One episode.
I think
Just
that's
drop that in for and it can be even be the same recording for everybody.
I mean that's the way I've seen other podcast entities doing this kind of information dispersal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
An episode that is just nothing but information about something.
So let me actually I can bounce this.
You guys know that my mother-in-law goes crazy for Christmas, right?
Yeah.
So basically,
we've heard tell.
Basically,
Crazy.
I think the way it's going to work, and I'm actually glad, although I want an H6 real bad.
So
think-
there's a new H5 that's supposed to be really good.
and
like
I've got
better than
a couple
H6.
of those.
You've got a couple of H5s?
Yeah, when it came out, we got a couple. Like the set of features was perfect for what we needed for our backup recorders and mobile recorders at Grand Valley, and so I talked our department chair into getting 2 of them.
How much are the H5s?
Like $400 or something.
It's less
H6
than
is
the-
$399.
Yeah, so it's like $299.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and it's great. Uses the same cartridges as the H6, the capsules and stuff.
Nice.
But it just doesn't have the extra set of inputs.
Right.
I mean,
You can
Yeah,
still use it as a
H5.
desktop. You can still use it as a desktop digital interface.
Right. Yep. And that's what I use it for about half the time, is as the second interface for our streaming setup and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm probably not going to get that because I'm going to instead get a bench anvil and a lead block and a set of spring removal pliers, a set of spring installation pliers. A
Wow.
set
So
of,
basically, you're just getting the tools that you can use to earn your own Zoom H6.
that's it. And I'm getting, and you think a pair of pliers is not a big deal, but a pair of pliers manufactured for band instrument repair, like I'm getting a set of scalloped duckbill pliers, which means one side are scalloped way in so you can weasel them down into tight areas. But those are like, $43, which is pretty damn expensive for a pair of pliers,
No shit.
I like it. You can buy a clarinet repairman a fish, or you can buy.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm getting lots of unsexy stuff, except it'll be really sexy to me.
Yeah, right,
That kind of
exactly.
stuff for
That
Christmas.
sounds awesome.
I've been watching your progress as an independent repair shop on Facebook, and it's very cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
I love the whole Facebook thing, and just the whole brand is awesome to me. I think it's
I'm gonna have more time this semester to do some work, so you'll be seeing a lot more of that. Because it's just one whole class is gone. I'm teaching more composition lessons, but I'm still gonna have
Less
more free
prep
time.
on lessons.
Yeah, way less prep on a composition lesson. And,
Yeah.
well, let's put it this way: if they get so frisky that I have to spend just as much time prepping for my lessons as I did for my class, I would be the happiest composition teacher in the world.
I
Right.
imagine. Yeah.
Right.
I somehow don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I've had two of my 4 students sent me shit by email this last week that I haven't looked at yet, wanting feedback on them.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Uh,
I need to do that today.
My alpha student Jeremy has already started sending me stuff over the holiday break.
You and me need to figure out how we're going to do this masterclass thing too.
Yeah, all I need to determine is which Monday we're going to start on. And then after we do that, we'll have a calendar laid out for the entire semester.
Are you guys doing master classes for each other?
I'm going to do a masterclass for Sam, and we're going to try it over the internet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I asked on Twitter and Facebook if anybody had done it before and had any tips, and got no responses.
Might be new ground then, yeah.
the new percussion guy at UNA he did juries this year where he and another guy are trading back and forth, Skyping in on each other's juries.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, well, I thought that was a cool idea.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
by the way,
Sam,
go ahead.
if you do get an H5 or an H6, yeah, put that as your interface for the stream or the thing, and then get a good room sound if there's any performance or anything like that.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I did some splicing together. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Copland Clarinet Concerto.
Yes.
But the opening movement is very long and very lyrical and very easy to make mistakes in when you're trying to record it all in one take, right? So
Sure.
Yeah.
Megan had a student entering a contest, and this is just I wouldn't have done this for like the competition, but this was to make sure you're not a blithering idiot, therefore you are worthy to enter the contest.
Yeah.
Submission, right? So I spliced together the first movement of that piece in 3 chunks using Audition, and I recorded some floor noise in the room, and I'm telling you, man, like, after I did it and I extracted the WAV file, I couldn't tell. Like, even with headphones and it jacked all the way into the roof, I couldn't tell where the cuts were.
Man,
That program is awesome.
Funny thing about that piece, Sam. We just released a new printing of that includes the original
High note.
ending. The original ending before Benny Goodman all fucked it up and decided not
Before
to.
Benny Goodman said, "I can't do that."
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. There are certain clarinet jocks that perform it in its original format already because there have been transcriptions of it out there.
Yeah.
Charles Neidick does the long version that has like double D's in it, which is
it looks crazy.
It's crazy high. I mean, it's crazy, squeezing the edge of what the instrument can accomplish. Kind of, not just it's hard. It's slouching towards impossible.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I'm gonna head out.
Okay.
Good to see you all, and see you in the new year.
Likewise.
Right. Yeah, happy
Likewise. And let's post this one with the audio only thing as well, and then we'll have all the shows doing the audio posts, and we'll be well on our way. And Nate, I'll record a little audio thingy here, and you can use that as a drop-in for the video feeds.
So do you mean to just post that and then post, or just like only post the drop-in for the video feeds and then continue with audio on the other stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Because you don't want to post 2 right back to back, because some podcatchers won't download both of them if one hasn't been listened to or something.
Right.
So I mean, just go ahead.
I feel like it would either be just your bit saying this is the last of the video, or have that at the beginning, like cut it to the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, I don't want to make 2 giant files.
Yeah, good. Cool.
All right, cool. All right, Have a good one, everybody.
Hey, by the way,
you
Dave,
too.
I
Yes.
played in the Prodigy Discs Part 2 event yesterday.
Uh-oh.
If one
How'd that
passes
go?
your way, well, it's sort of like the Ace Race, and Vibram has a thing called the Birdie Bash. They
Yeah.
set up a real short temporary course, and you go when you get either a PA1, putt and approach 1, which is the most stable putt and approach disc, or a PA4, the least stable putt and approach disc, although it's pretty fast for a putter. And then you go and you play the really short course, and there's a winner by score, and then there's an ace pool that you enter when you enter. And so far, when I finished yesterday, 2 people had already hit it. We're talking like sub 200-foot holes on almost all of them, But it's for $20, you get a disc and you get to compete in this event. You get a sticker and a hat and blah blah blah. So, and they're pushing them hard around the country, Dave. So, if you see one, do it. It's $20.
Yeah, I've thought
well
about doing the Ace Race one just because it would be fun to get the new whatever the new thing is from
Mhm.
Discraft.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I was starting to play, and then I got hired for this UCF thing, and I have not had a free minute at all.
the summer will be here again, eventually. Also,
take down one of your jobs.
yeah, look into the Vibram Birdie Bash too, because the way it's run is actually a little better because they have a 3-point system. A birdie is a point. If you draw metal off the tee, it's 2 points, and an ace is 3 points, and so that's how they play it.
Okay.
And you get a new testing it out Vibram disc the same, so it's like a Birdie Bash in that sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's like a Ace Race disc in that sense.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of, I'm probably going to go play some league golf, so I don't know if I'll finish the notes before I go do that. Otherwise, I will see you guys later.
All right. Well, the file's ready to go.
All right. See ya.
Let's see.
Sounds good. See ya.
I'll let you know when I get this other file. Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, and so I'll post that whenever. I'm gonna just be sitting at a computer for like
All
the
right.
rest of the day. So.
Sounds good.
All right. Sounds good.
I'll see ya.
Yep. See you, man.
Bye.